Hey guys, today we are going to cover chapter 17 and chapter 18. That's right, today I am going to cover two chapters in this one video because chapter 18 is not that important. You just need to know just one or two things which I'll discuss in this video. You just have to study that. You can skip the remaining portions if you want, but for your career point of view, you should study everything. You should not skip anything, but from exam point of view, chapter 18 is not that important. So, and my notes are also very short for chapter 18, so I'll be showing you everything. I'll be showing you my chapter 17 and chapter 18. Both the chapters will cover today in this video. Okay, and this is with this my study guide series is coming to an end. So PT manual, like I had promised you guys that once I clear my ACE, I am going to teach you guys ACE, and I'll be covering every chapter from the PT manual book. As promised, I have done that, and with this video it is over. Chapter 12 and 13 I have skipped. Purposely I have skipped. I'll tell you why at the end of this video. Yeah, so go through my notes. So if you have already purchased my notes, which I have made into easy PDF format and I've given you guys, if you have already purchased it, great. Otherwise you can take a screenshot while I'm showing you these notes. Okay, let's go guys. So guys, these are my chapter 17 notes. I apologize for the bad handwriting. I wrote this at the last minute, so it was a little, the handwriting is a little bit poor. So yeah, in chapter 17 I'll tell you what are the main things that you need to be focusing more on. So first I'll be just showing you my notes so that you can take a screenshot if you haven't purchased the PDF of my notes. So just take a screenshot as of now. So these things I'm not going to explain. These things you have to learn by yourself. It's given in the book. I just made a gist of it, that's all. So subchapter SCOPs, these are used by personal training businesses. So just remember these names guys. So maybe they might ask you some recall questions, something that carries very less marks. So just know the names, like what each of these mean. What are the advantage of this? SCOPs are shielded from personal liability beyond their investment. They are taxed as ordinary income. So these are the keywords that you should be looking for. Then you have LLC and LLP. Can be established by filing simple paperwork. So just know what this means, that's all. You don't have to learn in depth. C corporations have unlimited investors. Just remember that. 500 largest companies in US are C corps. Vicarious liability, what does that mean? Just know that is also known as respondent superior. Employers are responsible for the actions of their employees. So vicarious liability is something that is associated with your gym. Employers, people who recruit people, employers who are responsible for the actions of their employees. So if you do something wrong in your gym owner will have to suffer for it. So that's a so you are kind of a liability for the gym owner. If you do something wrong, the gym owner will be held responsible. So that is vicarious liability. Remember the difference between informed consent and waiver guys. ACE loves to ask these questions a lot. Like they'll try to confuse you between informed consent and waiver. Like what is the difference? You should know guys. Informed consent is nothing but your client is acknowledging the risks that are associated with taking part in a workout plan. So your customers or your clients are signing a document saying that I am aware of the risks that are involved in training, in physical exercise. So they're just signing that. What is waiver? Waiver on the other hand is something that your client is saying that in case because of you, so in case they get injured, they are not going to hold the personal trainer responsible for that. So that is client's voluntary abandonment to file suit. So this is a keyword that you should remember. Client's voluntary abandonment to file suit means a client is voluntarily saying that they are not going to file suit against you in case they go through some kind of injury. Now in waiver, the important point to remember is waiver is not applicable for gross negligence. What is gross negligence? Let's see over here. Gross negligence is failure to spot a client or improper program design for a client with back problem. So these are all examples of gross negligence guys. Let's say you're spotting a client while they're doing heavy squats or while they're doing heavy bench press. Suddenly you get distracted, you are looking at your mobile phone or you are looking at someone else and they injure themselves. So that is a gross negligence on your part. Similarly, let's say someone who is having a back problem, they have already mentioned that they have a back problem, right? In spite of them, you give them exercise like pronated leg raises, like they are lying on their stomach and they are trying to do a reverse raise with their legs, or they are lying supine and doing leg raises. So a lot of exercises that are kind of bad for back pain, and you give them that exercise, you design a program like that and they injure themselves. So that is a gross negligence from your end. So in case you do something like that, waiver is not going to protect you. That's what they are saying over here. So remember the difference between informed consent and waiver. So it's just a signing of an acknowledgement that they are aware of the risk associated with exercise. This, they are voluntarily stating that they are not going to hold you responsible in case they get injured. However, this is not applicable if there is a gross negligence happening from your end as a personal trainer. Then we have something called contributory negligence. It is also called as comparative negligence, in which the court is going to divide the damages. Like if you are more at fault, then you will be paying a bigger penalty, a fine or something like that. So both personal trainer and the client is at fault in this case. Some states do not consider contributory negligence as a standard for negligence cases. Instead, they consider such cases under comparative negligence. So just go through all these things, guys. This is important. Agreement to participate. So every time you are utilizing a class setting, you're taking group class. Like I take group class, so I know about this. If you are holding group classes or you're taking boot camps and all that, then agreement to participate document is very important, guys. Client was made aware of the normal outcome of the activity and they willingly assumed the risk of participation. So this is similar to an informed consent, but in case there is a group of people involved, then generally we go for agreement to participate. So in exam, what they'll do is they'll give you an example like this, that a lot of people have come to train under you. So what are you going to make them sign? So in the options, they might give you informed consent and they might give you waiver, and they'll also give you agreement to participate. You should select this option. So that's why this information is important for you. Again, this is not typically considered as a formal contract. Facilities should be inspected each day prior to beginning the training sessions. So in exam, they might ask you like, how often should you be inspecting the facilities? So in the options, they'll try to confuse you by saying that you should check it only just before the exam, just before the client uses the equipment, or just test it once in a week, something like that. But the answer is, it should be inspected each day prior to beginning the training sessions. Just before they start the training sessions, every day you should be inspecting the facilities. You should be looking at the equipments. If an unsafe condition is found, let's say one equipment is not working, or there is some oil or some water on the surface near the equipment, you should notify the facilities management immediately and you should avoid that area. Personal trainers should always have a contingency plan. Contingency plan means you should have an alternate in your hands. Okay, in case this equipment is not working, then what can I give this client instead of this exercise, or instead of this equipment, what can I use? So you should always have a contingency plan. So what happens? They might ask you questions like, what if you find a faulty equipment? You are inspecting through the facility as a personal trainer and you suddenly find that an equipment is at fault. Then what should you be doing as a personal trainer? So in the options, again, they'll try to confuse you by saying that you should just ignore it, or you should just walk away from it, or just inform the facility. That's it. So but what you should be answering: if unsafe or faulty equipment is found, then remove the equipment or disable it from further use. Use of homemade equipment should be avoided. This is an extra info that they're giving. This last sentence, forget about this. This sentence is important for you. You should remove the equipment or disable it from further use. Supervision. A trainer should never leave a client during a session or when there is a potential for injury while doing a particular exercise. You cannot give someone squats or heavy bench press and then tell them you keep doing this, I'll come in 2 minutes. You can't do that. Personal trainers should never provide exercise prescriptions, like exactly this is the exact exercise that you should do, this is the exact thing you should do. You should not prescribe like that. You can design a program, that's it. Only provide exercise programs. So they'll try. So these are the code words, guys. what is happening to my pronunciation. So these are your code words that you should be looking for, guys. Prescription. You are not allowed to prescribe, whether it is an exercise or whether it is diet. As a ACE certified personal trainer, you are not allowed to prescribe. So every time you hear the word prescribe or prescriptions, you should understand that that is something that you should not be doing as an ACE certified personal trainer. Instead, you should be designing exercise programs. The former is done only by licensed doctors like physiotherapists. Only they can prescribe an exercise for the client. Now comes insurance. This chapter is mainly about insurance, guys. So insurance is something that you have to know in this chapter. Like I said, I'll tell you the important points, right? So these are the important points, guys. Remember about the different types of insurance. They'll ask you questions from here, if at all they ask you questions from this chapter. All right. So what is a professional liability insurance? This is specifically designed to cover the health and fitness industry. Just read this one sentence and have this in mind, okay? You don't have to know in depth, but you should at least know that what is this insurance meant for. So if they ask like for health and fitness in industry, which insurance is generally used, you'll have to answer it as professional liability insurance. What is a specific insurance rider? Trainers who use their own home or the client's home for training should use this as a special addition. So this is something that if you are planning to go into freelancing, right? You want to become a freelance trainer, you're going to people's apartments, you're going to people's house and training them. In that case, or you're inviting them to your house or your garage gym, then you should have an insurance called specific insurance rider. Remember this. So they might ask you questions like, if you are going into freelancing or if you're going and training in a person's home, which insurance should you be taking? So you should understand, you should remember at that point that it should be specific insurance rider. Then you have something called umbrella liability policy. Provides added coverage for all the other insurance, auto, home, professional liability, etc. So this is an umbrella liability policy, something that provides added coverage. So these are the code word that you should be looking for. It provides added coverage. So people may already have a lot of insurance. On top of this, if they take that, they will get some added coverage. Product liability insurance. This is for trainers who sell products. In the event a product fails to perform properly, this insurance is particularly important for trainers who own a fitness center. So these are mostly for personal trainers who own their own gym and they have their own fitness center and they are selling protein powders and stuff like that. So in that case, what is the insurance that you should be having? Product liability insurance. This is easy to remember because you have the word called product, right? Product liability insurance. Then you have something called keyman insurance. This policy is designed to compensate the business for the loss of a person. Example, extended illness or death of a business partner. So usually when you're working with a business partner, you're doing partnership type of business, keyman insurance will protect you in case your partner falls sick or suddenly dies or something like that. Now you should understand what is intellectual property and you shouldn't be using it. Music or television broadcast sold commercially, strictly for private use of purchaser. These things you should not be using in your advertisement. Let's say you're trying to advertise yourself, you're trying to market yourself and all those things. You can use the ACE logo, but you cannot sell any product that is commercially sold and it is for private use of a particular purchaser. Trainers who develop specific routines or write a book. So these are all intellectual property. Let's say you have written a book by yourself, right? And you have developed a program and you have turned it into a PDF format. So in that case, that is your intellectual property. Nobody else can use that. Trainers who develop a company name or slogan. This is also an intellectual property. So you should know what are the examples of an intellectual property in case they ask you. Finally, you have risk management protocols. So there are three types of protocols that you should be following when you are managing risk. One is risk identification, second is risk evaluation, and third is risk management approaches. So these are the three ways, these are the three protocols that you should be using for risk management. Risk evaluation is the probability of the risk to occur and its severity. How likely is this particular risk to happen and what would be its consequences? That is called risk evaluation. So what are the risk management approaches? there are a lot of approaches. One is avoidance. You're totally avoiding that, removing the possibility of the danger by eliminating the activity altogether. So let's say there is an equipment in your gym where the probability of injury is very high, so there you're completely removing that equipment so that there is no question of getting into any kind of risk, right? So that is avoidance. Then you have transfer, move the risk to others. Example, insurance. So if you have insurance policies and waivers, even though you are under risk, you can transfer that risk, right? For example, your partner dies. If you have Keyman insurance, that risk has been transferred. Now you will get compensation because you have insurance for it. So that is called transfer. So this is one approach that you will be using for managing risk: avoidance, transfer. Third is reduction, modify the risk by removing part of the activity. So let's say you are conducting a boot camp and there is an equipment where the risk of injury is a lot. So you are modifying that equipment and you are telling that you can only use this equipment under XYZ conditions. In that case, you are reducing the risk. So modify the risk by removing part of the activity. Let's say you are giving your let me give you one more example. Let's say you are making people do jumping squats or box jumps, right? So plyometrics you're giving them. So instead of asking them to do a box jump, you are just asking them to do squats in place. Or instead of jumping high, you're telling them, jump very slowly, very less. So that way you're modifying the risk by reducing part of the activity, not the entire activity but part of it. Then you have something called retention. If eliminating or removal of a risk would also remove a potential benefit, then it is retained. Risks in the low or medium severity category are usually retained. So this is a little complicated. So they are telling that, let's say if you remove a risk, let's say you remove an equipment because it's risky. If you remove that equipment, your potential benefit is also going to be very less because you must have invested a lot of money in it, right? So in that case, when you do a comparison, if you feel that the risk is not very high and the benefit that comes from using that equipment is high, so what did I say just now? If the risk is low but the benefit from using that equipment is high, then you keep that equipment, right? So you look at the ratio, the risk to benefit or the risk to reward ratio, and based on that you retain something. That is called retention. This is also an approach that you use while trying to manage risk. Then you have implementation. So implementing the plan, you come up with a plan and then you implement it. This is also an approach that you will be using for risk management. Evaluation, assessing the outcomes of risk management approaches that need to be altered. So you are evaluating the outcomes of the risk, the approach that you are using, and based on that you are making some changes in the approach. That is called evaluation. This is different from risk evaluation. That is a protocol. This is probability of the risk to occur and its severity. You are trying to guess what will be the likelihood of this particular risk to happen, and if it happens, what would be the severity or the consequence of that risk. How bad or how low will be the consequence. That is risk evaluation. This is just evaluation where you are assessing the outcomes of certain risk management approaches. Like these are all approaches, right? So you are assessing these approaches and seeing whether some changes has to be made in that or not. That is called evaluation. Remember, risk with a high severity of injury and medium or high frequency of occurrence should be avoided. So let's say there is an exercise where the risk of injury is very high and the frequency of that injury to happen is also very high. In that case, that exercise should be completely avoided. So let's say behind the back lat pull down, or the high rows that you do. So let's say a lot of the risk of injury is very high for that, right? There is people who come with shoulder impingement issues. There are people who have very less flexibility. They have limited range of motion. So for these people, if you give them behind the neck presses or behind the neck pull downs, or you give them all those high rows and stuff like that, not only the severity of the injury is going to be high, but also the frequency of that injury to happen is going to be high. So a lot of people might get injured. So this is just an example I am giving. So if that is the case, you should avoid that equipment, or you should avoid that exercise altogether, completely. So that is what they are telling over here. First point. Second point, risk with a low severity of injury and high, medium, low frequency of occurrence should be retained. So let's say the frequency of the injury to happen is very often, very the frequency is high, but the severity of the risk is very less. In that case, you should not avoid it. You can keep it. Like let's say you have this thing called rope, right? Battle ropes. I've seen a lot of people getting injured while doing battle ropes, but the severity of the injury is very low. It's probably a slight sprain and stuff like that, and accidentally it happens. So even though it happens a lot, we are retaining that exercise or that equipment because the severity of the risk is low. So even if the frequency of the occurrence is high, medium or low, irrespective of how frequent the risk happens, if the severity is very low, then we retain it. This is a strategy. Finally, risk with a high or medium severity of injury and medium or low frequency of occurrence should be transferred. So let's say you're training someone, you're going to a person's home and training them, right? There are so many risks involved over there. The injury can be very severe. You never know with exercises, right? They can get severely injured, and the frequency can also be medium or low. Maybe it will not happen at all, but maybe it will happen very frequently. Not very frequently, but medium. In that case, you should take insurance policies. Situations like that where the risk involved is high or medium and the frequency is medium or low, then it should be transferred. Then there's something called general liability. General liability insurance covers facility related personal injuries. So again, let me read that again. General liability insurance covers facility related personal injuries like slips, trips and falls. So gym facilities should always consider getting these insurance policies. So what is the policy that gym facilities should always consider taking? Remember, the answer will be general liability. Don't confuse that with professional liability insurance. This is specifically designed to cover the health and fitness industry altogether. Like this is a common one. Product liability, personal trainers who are selling products should be used. Key man insurance is something, remember the word man, right? Key man. So think about your partner. If you're working with a partner and the partner gets injured or falls sick, you need some insurance, right? You need some compensation if that loss happens. So key man is related to man, someone who is your partner. Try to remember like that. Umbrella, remember the word umbrella. Umbrella means added coverage. So you already have a lot of insurance. On top of that, you're taking some added coverage. That's all. So with that, chapter 17 is finishing. So next, let me quickly cover chapter 18. Chapter 18, the notes are very small, just one page. So let me quickly cover chapter 18. So they are telling there are 6 components of a business plan. One is executive summary, which is a brief outline of what the business is about. Then there is business description, where details of the business, mission statement, all of these things are involved. Then there's a marketing plan. You have to explains how potential clients become paying clients. So you're giving a plan that how you can convert potential clients into paying clients. Then there's an operational plan, structure for how business will operate. Then there is risk analysis. In this chapter, risk analysis, the SWOT analysis is a little important. You might get maybe a recall question from here. So we'll see what SWOT is in a bit. Then finally, you have decision making criteria. So these are components of a business plan, guys. Decision making criteria, cost to benefit analysis, where benefits overweigh the financial risks involved. So the benefits that come from applying that plan is going to be huge, and the risk factor is less. So that is decision making criteria. SWOT analysis, or SWOT, is strength, weakness, opportunities, threats. This is a tool for conducting risk assessment. So you should, when you're starting a business, you have to check these things. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? And what are the threats involved? 7 rules of selling. This is something that I just wrote it down, but you won't get questions from all this, guys. Chapter 18, remember, for your career it is very important, as in you will get some really good tips about how to carry sales, how to ask for the sale, and marketing strategies and stuff like this. But from exam point of view, this chapter is not important. Just remember the 6 components of a business plan. Just know in short what is executive summary, and just know what SWOT stands for: strength, weakness, opportunities, threat. That's it. With that, chapter 18 is over. So let me just quickly see if I have missed anything from chapter 18. Okay, this is chapter 18. It's all about business fundamentals. Yeah, everything is explained here in short, so just go through this and you'll know. Just know what executive summary is. Everything else is good for your career point of view, but from exam point you don't have much here. SWOT analysis, yes, this is important. Just know what it is. So just look at this and you'll understand. So let's say you are a business owner and you're starting a gym, right? You own a gym and you're trying to hire a personal trainer. So you'll have to check, what are the strengths of that personal trainer? Does he have a 4-year degree in kinesiology? Is he an ACE certified personal trainer? Stuff like that. What are his passions, goals, stuff like that. What are the weaknesses? Not confident when asking clients for money. So you're evaluating a person based on SWOT analysis. Opportunities: participate in personal training sales workshop, develop a talk on lifestyle and management. What are the threats? Competition from other trainers in the club, and 4 other facilities and training studios in the immediate area. So you just go through this, guys. They have done a good job over here. Just go through this and you'll understand. Rest everything, like I said, it's good for your career. You'll get a lot of good information from this chapter, so definitely go through it. But from exam point of view, it's not that important. You won't get any direct questions from here or high marks questions from here. Yeah, so with that, ACE PT manual is over, guys. It was a pleasure teaching you guys so far. I had promised you guys that I'll complete PT manual somehow, and I managed. So if you're wondering why I skipped chapter 12 and chapter 18, sorry, chapter 12 and chapter 13, it's because it's not important from exam point of view. You won't be getting any questions from chapter 12 and chapter 13. Chapter 12 is basically case studies, and chapter 13 is your Pilates, yoga, stuff like that. So you won't get any questions from there. If at all you get, maybe you'll get one question, and that will be of very low marks. So don't worry. If you want to skip, feel free to skip if you don't have time. But if you do have time, definitely study everything, guys. And especially from career point of view, chapter 12 and 13 will be very useful for you. But from exam point of view, it's not going to be. Alright, guys, thank you for watching. You can catch me on Instagram as athlete.sanju, SANJU, and you can also purchase all of these notes that I have made. Everything, all the notes that I've shared on this channel, also the notes that I haven't shared on this channel, everything I'm giving at a very low price. So you can message me on Instagram and you can buy this exact notes in PDF format. Yeah, thank you, guys. Thank you for watching.